I added some new challenges. So, yes, you heard that correctly. I decided to add 2 new readathons to my year, which I'm just getting out of a reading slump and all I'm doing is adding books to my TBR and to my monthly reading. But okay, so let me tell you about the one that I found through Donna, who Donna Marie reads. She sent me a link to a YouTube video and was like, "You're doing this, right? We're doing this. This is happening." And that was the Similar Society Readathon. Now, if you know me, you know that one of my favorite pastimes when I just want to kind of relax and chill out, one of the things that I do and love to do and have been doing for years since I was a teenager, even probably younger than that, was to play Sims. This has been a huge part of my life. I am in my 30s now, but I still enjoy getting a good simming session in, and I am in love. I continuously start new save files, make new families, all of the things. And this seems to combine 2 of my favorite hobbies, which is reading and playing Sims. Now, even if you have never played The Sims, you can still do this challenge. The amount of work that has gone into this is insane. Now, I will leave a link in the description down below. It is by The Reading and Writing Life over here on YouTube. And it is an insane challenge. Now, one of the plus sides is that there is no time limit on this. You can just work on it as you go or as you play your Sims, you know? And they have told us that they are planning on releasing DLCs, which is basically like expansions and making it bigger. But they're not planning on doing that for at least in the next couple of months, just so we can get started. And basically what it is you make and build your Sims and your Sims lives by reading a book that matches the prompt or what you want to add. For example, a Sim, when you start out, has 3 traits and has an aspiration that they want to accomplish. And let's say for the aspiration, which is basically what they want to accomplish in life, you want to be a painter extraordinaire. Now, if you want to do this, you will have to read a book with a vivid atmosphere or a strong visual imagery, and so on and so forth. So every single thing that builds your Sims lives has a book added to it. Now, I have not started this yet, but I am very excited to do so. I am also maybe playing around with making this into a series. I don't know yet. Maybe even having some Sims gameplay. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I don't want to add too many things on my plate, but this is one of those that we can work on whenever we want to. Like they mentioned, there is no time limit. So we can just do this whenever. And again, all of the information is down in the description. And if you want to join, please let me know. And also, for people who have been wondering about this whole thing or get like really excited to play Sims or want to try it out, The Sims 4 is currently free to download on the EA app, I think. Also, I do want to add a little bit of a disclaimer in this because The Sims is currently going through a thing. There is a possibility that The Sims, or I think even EA or Maxis, or the details of that business deal, I do not know, but at least we know that The Sims and The Sims, the property of The Sims might get bought by a company that, by private shareholders that are not aligned with my beliefs, let's say. I am currently not buying anything new Sims related until we have like a clear understanding about whether or not the buyout is happening, just because I do not want to put any more money into the pockets of organizations and people that I do not agree with. To make a long story short, one of the people in this shareholder thing that is possibly buying Sims is related, not closely, but kind of closely, to a certain orange carrot in the US of A. And no, just no. So again, this is not me saying that you have to buy these Sims products, like anything of The Sims. The Sims, like I mentioned, is currently free. So if you want to try it, you can. I will not be buying anything until all of this is cleared up. So that is all I'll say on it. And the version of the reading challenge currently is only base game, so you don't even need any of the expansions or any of the things that will require you to spend money. If you have any more questions, or if you're kind of wondering about this buyout, I will link a video in the description by Little Simsy. She is a very huge Sims YouTube creator here on this channel, and she made a video about the buyout and what it could possibly mean for the franchise. And I did really appreciate her breakdown of this. So if you're wondering, if you're curious, if you don't know what you should or should not do, I will leave the link in the description. And still, it's up to you whether you want to spend money or not. It's your own prerogative. I'm just telling you what my opinion on the matter is. The next challenge that I want to add on my list is a challenge that's going to run from April this year up until April of the next year, or like end of March next year, which is a challenge that I'm sure a lot of you will know, but I only discovered last year when I felt like it was too late to join, which is the R Fantasy Bingo. Now, if you don't know what this is basically the Reddit fantasy thread that puts out a bingo board every single year during the month of April and runs for the entire year afterwards. Now, I looked at it and I could already see books that I could possibly read for every single prompt. So I thought, you know what, why not just jump? Why not just try it? Am I gonna succeed? Who knows? We're gonna give it a shot. So just to add a little bit onto this, I'm gonna share with you all my TBR that I decided for the bingo board. Is this subject to change? Of course it is. I am still a mood reader at heart, and there will be more books coming out. So I'm sure that some of these will get switched out, but these are the books that I'm currently planning on reading for the prompts. The first prompt is a trans or non-binary character, and for this I've decided to read the second book in the Cemetery Boys series. Now, I think this has yet to come out, but it is coming out this year, and I loved the first book of this, and it was such a wonderful experience to read this. This is about a trans boy, and it is also, the first book was centered about the Day of the Dead, if I remember correctly, and about his whole family, and there's a romance in it. It was so cute. It was so nice. Also very suspenseful at times. But I really did enjoy it, and I'm kind of curious to see what they're going to do for the second book. So yeah, this was one of those that I was actually highly anticipating. I didn't expect a second one, but I'm very excited to try it. The second prompt is to judge a book by its title. Now, this was just one of those things where I just scrolled through a lot of book titles and was like, ooh, this sounds fun. And for this one, I decided to listen to or read, I don't know yet, This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me. Yeah, something about that just intrigued my interest. It just pinged. It's also a beautiful cover. So, and this is already on bookshelves. This also came out this year. And I'm kind of curious. I haven't ever read anything by this author, So very curious, very curious. I haven't even looked at the synopsis of this just because I really want to go in blind, because why not? You know, if the prompt is to judge a book by its title, I don't think it should mean that you also check out the blurb and check out what it's actually about. Just go in blind, is what I say. The third prompt was a translated book, and for this I've actually decided to read Tales from the Cafe. I've already read Before the Coffee Gets Cold last month, I want to say, and this was such a lovely read. It's honestly, I kind of want to say that it's the book that got me out of my reading slump, just because it was like almost a collection of short stories, which meant that it felt like I was really flying through it. But at the same time, they all really held a really nice message in them. Don't get me wrong, by the end of it, I was crying. But I didn't mind. It was very wholesome and it was very lovely. Also did see that my library is holding, I think, pretty much the entire series of this whole thing. So any excuse that I have to go and pick up number 2 and maybe even finish this series, I will be doing that, because again, series, thing. The fourth prompt is a small press or self-published book, and for this one I decided to go with Saint Death's Daughter. Now, this is a book that I got off of someone else's TBR and just by scrolling through the Storygraph challenges, because it was not easy to find a book that I could get my hands on that I wanted to read, and that was also by a small publishing company. The amount of books that I thought, oh, I can read this, and then it just turned out to be a smaller section of a huge company, was quite disheartening. I'm not gonna lie, but this one did actually intrigue me. It's by C.S.E. Cooney. With this bingo board, I feel like it's gonna challenge me to check out authors that I haven't read from before, because one of the challenges with this bingo board is to actually use a different author for every single prompt. Maybe we'll find new favorites, which I'm very excited about that prospect. The next one is a unusual transportation prompt. Now, I looked it up, and without trying to spoil myself, because we have to be careful. And for this is a book that actually is on my TBR for this month, which is Circe. I had to enlist the help of other sources, I had to Google it and try and be sneaky and not get spoiled. But apparently there's an unusual form of transportation in this. If this is not true, please let me know. So we might have to switch this out. But again, this is on my TBR for this month. So hopefully by the end of this month, we can actually already scratch one off, which is perfect. The next prompt was a book about the afterlife, for which I decided to read Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. Now, if you've been around, TJ Klune has become an automatic read for me. And literally the first sentence on the back of this is when a reaper, and I stopped reading there. When there's a reaper involved, it's going to talk about the afterlife, about death. So now the next one again required me to do some sleuthing without getting spoiled, which was the Game Changer prompt. And for this, I decided to go with a book that kind of was around everywhere. I feel like a couple of months ago, and it's still going strong, I think, which is the Dungeon Crawler Carl. And I still have no idea what this is about, but I've heard so many great things about this series that I'm kind of feeling FOMO, if I'm going to be honest. I kind of feel left out by not having read this yet. So this was the perfect opportunity to put this on the list. The next prompt was a vacation spot, so a spot where you would love to go and go on vacay. And for this, I decided to go with a book that I know I will be reading or rereading. I am also using my one allowance to reread a book for this prompt, which is A Court of Thorns and Roses. If you have been maybe living under a rock and did not know, book number 6 and 7 are coming our way in this series very soon, like by the end of this year. And we are currently doing a reread of all of these Throne of Glass books. We are currently on Heir of Fire. By the time you're seeing this video, I have finished Assassin's Blade. We are going into Heir of Fire, and after that, my plans are to go from basically Heir of Fire, or from Throne of Glass, into ACOTAR, into Crescent City, into the new books. I might go Crescent City first and then ACOTAR. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure by then there will be opinions on the interwebs about what to do first. Now, do I want to be a part of the Spring Court? No. No. If you know, you know. If you don't know, get knowing, is all I'll say. Now, the next prompt was to read 5 short stories, and for this prompt, I decided to read Buried Deep and Other Stories by Naomi Novik. Now, I've already read Spinning Silver by this author, which was an amazing novel, in my opinion, and I just really want to see what else she gets her hands on. I don't know if this is going to be like another interpretation of fairy tales that she has done, but I'm just curious. I loved the way she writes. I love the way her writing flows and how it actually feels like you're reading a fairy tale. Like, you know how fairy tales have this very specific way of writing? That's how that entire book felt. So I'm very curious to see how this is going to hold up. Now, the next prompt is a bit of a wild card for me. I'm not going to lie. It is the older protagonist, for which I decided to read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Now, I have started this previously and DNF'd it, because I just wasn't really getting into it. Now, I do think it was a wrong place, wrong time kind of a deal. So I do want to give it another shot, because I know there are a lot of people who love this book. And it does sound like it would be my cup of tea, but for some reason I wasn't into it but the first time I read it. So we're just gonna give it another shot. This might get switched out. We're gonna see. If I do, for some reason, it just still doesn't really float my boat, we are just gonna switch it out. Now, the next prompt is the first book in a duology, and for this one I decided to go with Crimson Moth by Kristen Cicerelli. Now, I have read books from her before, and quite enjoyed them, so I'm kind of curious to see how this book is gonna go. I think I discovered this by watching a video of Becca and the books, and she really enjoyed it, and her reading kind of correlates with mine, so I'm hoping I'm also gonna enjoy this. And again, this is one of those books where I also did ask a lot of you when I was getting my bookshelf about possible new books to buy, and this one was on the list that you guys thought that I was gonna like and enjoy, and a lot of friends thought that I was gonna enjoy. So let's see if that actually holds up. The next prompt was a Our Fantasy book club or read-along book. Now, for this, the lovely people did share a whole spreadsheet list, and the first book that I actually saw on this, that is also on my bookshelf, is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Now, this is a very, very highly rated series by anyone who's read it, I feel like. So I feel like this might be a dangerous book to actually dive into and be obsessed about. So I'm excited to start my Pierce Brown journey, I'm not gonna lie, and just see what this entire series is about and why people are like praising it so highly. So very curious to see what is actually happening here. The next book is a book that was published in 2026. Now, as you saw, there are already a few books that could fit this, but we aren't allowed to double up. So for this, I've actually decided to go with a book that has come on my radar this month because of Aurelium, which is the Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Cafe or Cat Shelter, which I think is gonna be like cozy fantasy vibes, which is always something that I'm gonna enjoy and gonna like, I hope. So again, we'll see how it goes. We'll see what we like. This is also, I think, a book that I'm going to be using for my Aurelium Impling summoning ritual. But again, we have all the time in the world for that. The next prompt is Explorers and Rangers, which is basically someone who's trying to figure something out. And for this, I decided to go with Calabasas by R.F. Kuang. I have not read an R.F. Kuang book that I did not enjoy. The Poppy War, didn't really enjoy it, but that was just because of the story was great, but what was in the story was very I didn't like it. But then again, I read Babel, loved Babel, read Yellowface, got very angry, which is I think what she intended. And now we have Babel, this Calabasas. This has been on my shelf for quite a while, so I'm excited to finally get to it. The next prompt was a part 2, or like book 2 in a duology. Now, keep in mind, we are allowed to actually double up on the author on this one. But why? Why? You know, I just don't want to. But so I decided to go with a different duology. Now, mind you, this is a first novel. So the second novel is obviously what's going to be. But I'm reading the duology The Night and the Moth. Yes, The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. Now, this is a book that, again, Donna recommended that I'm really going to like and I should read. I was very kind of doubting whether to read this by this author or the Two Twisted Crowns. Is that the other series that she has? I think so. And Donna told me that I would probably enjoy this one more. And the fact that it's like gothic romantasy very much speaks to me. So obviously this is just the first book. The second one that I'm going to be reading, or the second book in this duology, is The Knave and the Moon. So we're going to wait and see. Obviously, in the worst case scenario where I find that I do not enjoy this book, I can still read the second novel in the Crimson Moth series or duology, which I actually have no idea what it's called. So we have options, is what I'm saying. And I do have a few other duologies on my shelves that could possibly work for this. The next prompt is another series, another starting of a series, which is a book that's been on my shelf for quite a while, which is Guild by Raven Kennedy. Again, this was like a series that was everywhere for a certain amount of time. And yeah, I'm kind of intrigued. I'm not gonna lie. It feels like it's about maybe a prisoner that doesn't really realize she's a prisoner or some sort of thing. Because, you know, Gilded Cage is still a prison. Maybe kind of Stockholm Syndrome, kind of like, I don't know. But again, intrigued why everyone was so insanely highly recommending this book for a while. The next one is a non-human protagonist, and for this I decided to go with Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I've read a few of Ali Hazelwood's books, but not a lot, and this is her first foray into like the romantasy realm, and I've heard good things, but we're gonna have to wait and see. Again, like vampires, werewolves, we're getting Twilight vibes. Twilight is its own thing, but I'm very curious to see what Ali Hazelwood does with her first romantasy and like that side of the bookish sphere. The next prompt was to read a middle grade book. Now, for this one, I've just decided that whatever Percy Jackson Heroes of Olympus book that I'm going to be reading is going to get put in there. If you do not know, we are currently restarting or continuing in the Percy Jackson Rick Riordan world. We are in the month of April reading The Lost Hero. So we're starting with the first book in the Heroes of Olympus series. That's the second book that I could possibly scratch off this month. And there's a third, because the next prompt is First Contact. And so like a first contact with an alien species or with a different civilization or all of the things. And for this, I did decide to go with Project Hail Mary. Now, this could have been a book that would not have been on my TBR because of Aurelium, because it was going between, for my Aurelium readathon, between Project Hail Mary and The Housemaid. And I put it up as a poll on the Discord for Aurelium, and Project Hail Mary won, like with a landslide. So that is what I'm reading this month to actually get through Aurelium and the spring equinox. So this will get finished this month, which is very exciting. The next book is a murder mystery prompt. Now for this, I decided to go with What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez, I want to say. Now this also, if I'm not mistaken and if I'm remembering correctly, this is also set in Egypt. It's got a murder mystery going on, obviously, otherwise it wouldn't fit the prompt. It's got some generational things happening. So for someone who has really enjoyed movies like The Mummy and The Mummy Returns, yes, we're getting another Mummy movie with Brendan Fraser. I cannot wait. I will be in cinemas first thing the second it comes out. So I'm hoping it might give me some of those vibes. Again, this is an author that I haven't read from before. So I'm so excited to see how all of this is going to turn out. I am very certain that there might be a new favorite author and a new favorite book in here. And it's also going to make me like read new genres and new vignettes of fantasy, which I'm very much looking forward to. But let's get back. The next book was a prompt for a cat squasher. Now for this, it means that you have to read a book that is over 500 pages. And I have decided to go with Warstorm, which is the final book in the Red Queen series. I'm currently reading King's Cage, the third book in this series, and I'm only a little ways in, and the start of that novel, the start of that book has been great. So, which to me is a really good sign, because it's only the start, but if you feel like the series has gotten better over time, then I hope she sticks the landing, Victoria Aveyard. I hope she does. This has, let me see, over 600 pages, so we're more than well qualified to fit this prompt. And again, we're also going to be finishing a series, which I'm very excited about. Now, the next prompt was, again, one that I needed to do a little bit of sleuthing, which was the Feast Your Eyes prompt, which meant that there was a very significant food or drink that had a major part in the story. And for this, I decided to go with A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. Now, I can already tell this is probably going to be like an October read, you know, witches, those kinds of things. But just this whole vibe of this cover, of the title, I already know I'm very much going to enjoy reading this book or listening to this book or however I want to consume it. It just very much reads like my vibe. So very excited to try this out. The next prompt was a prompt that I had a lot of trouble with finding a book that I wanted or that I got excited to read, which was a book that was published in the 70s. Now, I am not really one of those people who reads books that are much older. Well, much older, it's not that much older, but you know, who have been published in like 70s. I can read classics. I like to enjoy classics, but if you don't know, English is not my first language. So going back to classics is oftentimes very much an effort for me to figure out why it's a classic and like getting into the old language. So this might be interesting. Again, the 70s, that's not that long ago. Anyway, I picked for this one Salem's Lot by Stephen King, and this will be my first Stephen King novel, which I don't know if it's a good book to start with. I have no idea, but this was on the list, on the Storygraph like prompt list, and I've been wanting to try out a Stephen King novel. Again, a good excuse as any to try and start this one. The next prompt is the second to last one, which is Politics and Court Intrigue. Now again, some sleuthing, but I decided to go with Feybound by Sarah L. Arifi, which is the same author of The Priory of the Orange Tree, which I did not choose because that one scares me. Do I have it on my shelf? Yes, I do. But that is like, what, 800-900 pages, something crazy like that? So we decided to go with this one because, again, this was one of those books that got recommended to a lot of people when I said, I want to broaden the bookshelves. Which one should I get? And people said I would most likely enjoy this one as well. So here we are. Now, the final prompt that was on this list and on this bingo board was to read a book by a person of color. And for this one, I decided to go with Five Broken Blades by May Corland. Now, this has, again, been on my radar for quite some time. I think from what I remember, this follows 5 mercenaries that, you know, there might be some things happening and they are sent on a mission or on a, like, thing that they have to... Anyway, it sounds like it's going to be multi-POV. It sounds like there might be multiple romances started in this. And I'm very, very excited to get to this. Again, this was a book that I first got on my radar by watching a Becca video, and she loved it. So, and she flew through this. So I'm very curious to see what I'm going to think of it. So yes, those are the 2 challenges that I've decided to add to my reading this year. Again, the Sims one is probably going to be one that is going to be around for longer than this year and next year. Maybe, I don't know. But it is one that seems to combine 2 of my favorite hobbies. So I'm very excited to go with that. If you want to see some more on that, if you want to see like Sims videos or whatever, please let me know because I would love to share them with you, obviously. And then our fantasy bingo is the first year that I'm going to be participating. I'm very curious to see whether or not I'm going to be able to do it. Now, obviously, I decided not to do hard mode because it is still the first year that I'm going to be joining. So I decided to ease into this. I do want to try to get a blackout. That is what I do want to do. And the way that it's looking, I might already be able to scratch off 3 books by the end of this month. So that's a pretty decent start. But again, this is going to be one of those challenges where I'm probably going to give you guys an update after like 6 months. And we can see how far we've gotten into the bingo board. And then obviously by the end of March next year, we'll see if I actually succeeded. But this seems to be the perfect challenge for me to discover new authors, discover new series, sadly, for my challenge, but you know, and just discover, like I mentioned, like new niche vignettes of fantasy genres that I might have like shunned in the past. So very excited to get back into this. Again, I am very happy that I seem to be crawling out of my reading slump and that I'm doing well and enjoying reading, and it doesn't feel like a chore and everything is just getting better, which is good. Now that's going to be it for today's video. If any of you are deciding to join in the Our Fantasy or the Simtopia Readathon Challenge, please do let me know in the comments. And I hope to talk to you guys real soon.